Welcome, everyone. Very nice to see you here, and I know many people are joining online. I'm speaking in English because I know there are a few people here who speak English. I wanted to welcome you on behalf of the Mode Partners 025, State of Fashion, FDFA, Fashion and Design Festival Arnhem, Museum Arnhem, Rijnijssel and Artes. And I also want to welcome you on behalf of GIST, the Gelderse Innovators in Sustainable Textiles, which is the circular design hub as part of the Dutch Circular Textile Valley. And GIST is a collaboration of Artes Future Makers, the Circular Fashion Lab of Wageningen University and Research, and the network organization KIEMT. So we are hosting this together. It is also a follow-up event of the event we organized on June 30, just before the summer, Designing Circular Textile Ecosystems, where we presented the GIST collaboration and we presented some of our collaborative projects. And I would like to tell you a bit more today about the vision of the Mode Partners 025. We are a collaboration, a consortium of fashion-related organizations, presentation platforms, cultural organizations, research and educational partners in Arnhem, in the region of Arnhem. And we joined forces because we feel a shared urgency to contribute to the transition of the fashion system, the transformation of the fashion system. And we want to do so by embracing our own locality here in Arnhem and in the region. So we really see Arnhem as a place where socially engaged makers, practitioners, designers, startups, innovative companies, researchers, students come together. We see it as a city of makers, a creative breeding ground for experimentation, innovation, and design. And collectively, we want to use fashion as a way to contribute to nature instead of only exhausting nature and exploiting nature, and use fashion as a way to contribute to societal challenges. So together with the Mode Partners and with GIST, we develop new practices, new materials, as an alternative to how the current system operates, the current industrial fashion system operates. So we present new developments in the field of fashion to, represent a more responsible, or to contribute to a more responsible fashion system. And in doing so, we try to nurture this local ecosystem as well in the region, and to facilitate a continuous cross-fertilization in order to eventually contribute to systemic change. So we are really committed to let this ecosystem flourish together and expanding the ecosystem, letting it grow organically together with new partners and pioneers. So we're really excited to be here today together with you physically and everyone who's looking right now online to connect and, to contribute to each other's ambitions and our collective ambitions. So we will present some of the things that are happening right now, some activities and projects going on, but also some exciting things and activities and presentations that are coming up. And this afternoon we have a program with pitches of local partners and pioneers to share their work and see how we can connect. We also want to get an insight of, where is your energy at this moment? And how can we connect? And how can we deepen existing connections? And how would you contribute to realizing our collective ambitions? So this is also what we wanted to create today. We want to show what the potential is of what we have here and what we're already doing in the region, and reconnect that and try to let that flourish even more. So I'm really looking forward to that today, and thank you all for being here. I think Sebastian is the first speaker, so the floor is yours.
Yes, well, first a short movie then. Yeah, well, I will continue my presentation in Dutch, so sorry for the English speakers. Jullie zagen een film van Wendelin Daan samen met Mary-Lou Berkelin gemaakt als een van de vele video's van deze afgelopen editie van het Fashion and Design Festival. Waarbij eigenlijk die in het teken stond van de purpose van mode en design. En die we zijn aangegaan naar aanleiding van 10 verschillende dimensies, dus 10 verschillende invalshoeken, hoe je eigenlijk met mode en design bezig zou kunnen zijn. In dit geval ging in de dimensie consumptie en zijn Wendelin en Mary-Lou ingegaan op de obsessie van het maar alsmaar uitpakken van nieuwe webshop orders en eigenlijk dat het bijna meer daarom gaat dan het daadwerkelijk blij zijn met een kledingstuk. Het is een van de vele video's die zijn gemaakt voor afgelopen editie. We hebben dit soort type video's. Elke dimensie had een visueel-inhoudelijke video, waarbij dus de creatieve vrijheid is gelaten bij de verschillende ontwerpers die daarbij betrokken zijn geweest. Daarnaast zijn we aan de hand van de verschillende dimensies op bezoek geweest bij verschillende ateliers van ontwerpers die in Nederland door het hele land zitten, maar allemaal een verbintenis hebben met de regio hier. Hebben we interviews gehouden met ontwerpers of met ondernemers uit de stad die over de verschillende invalshoeken, en deden we onder andere met Rijnijssel samen ook, hebben we Purpose TV uitgebracht, waarbij studenten van Rijnijssel Creatieve Industrie mensen op straat hebben geïnterviewd en daarvan video's hebben gemaakt. Aan de hand wederom weer van de verschillende dimensies. Dus bijvoorbeeld inderdaad het ondervragen van mensen op straat over hun consumptiegedrag en hoe ze daarover nadenken. De afgelopen editie was voornamelijk online met een paar hybride events. En waarbij we dus ingingen op het eigenlijke doel van mode en design. Of dat probeerden te onderzoeken samen met de verschillende ontwerpers. En we merkten tijdens en ook nog steeds dat is eigenlijk natuurlijk een eindeloze zoektocht. En daarom gaan we voor de aankomende editie willen we daarop verder borduren. En gaan we verder met die purpose van fashion en design. En dan vooral kijken naar de verschillende waarden die we eigenlijk allemaal kunnen toekennen aan mode en design. Behalve, of tenminste zo min mogelijk, de commerciële waarden. Maar vooral kijken naar de culturele waarden, alle verschillende waarden die er aan vastzitten. Emotionele waarden is bijvoorbeeld een belangrijk onderdeel waarbij we ook echt met de Arnhemmers samen willen gaan kijken welke producten en kledingstukken zij in huis hebben waarbij ze echt een emotionele band hebben opgebouwd. En we willen dat verhaal in de binnenstad en op verschillende manieren gaan delen met de bezoekers van Arnhem. Aan aanleiding van kijken naar verschillende waarden zullen we binnenkort een open call uit gaan schrijven voor aan Arnhem verbonden ontwerpers. Dus dat zijn alle ontwerpers die ofwel hier gevestigd zijn, maar kunnen dus ook ontwerpers zijn die hier zijn opgeleid, hier geboren zijn en elders in de wereld zich begeven. Om aan hen te vragen om te laten zien middels een presentatie in juni welke waarden zij toekennen aan mode. We gaan dit jaar overigens van start op 2 juni tot en met 2 juli is de hele programmering van het Fashion and Design Festival, wat verder bestaat uit allerlei partner-events. Maar we starten dit jaar met 10 dagen volle programmering aan de hand van deze inhoud. Waarbij we ook vooral eigenlijk willen kijken willen uitnodigen om mee te gaan in deze thematiek. Ik heb al de eerste gesprekken heb ik al gevoerd met ontwerpers die sowieso al met interessante projecten bezig zijn en die graag willen presenteren in Arnhem. En zo hopen we eigenlijk de hele maand vol te kunnen zetten met interessante activiteiten en van lezingen tot exposities tot presentaties en alles wat daarbij hoort. Dit jaar dan voor het eerst samen met State of Fashion. Daar zullen jullie zo meteen van alles over horen. En met State of Fashion zullen we daar en op een aantal punten ook inhoudelijk samen gaan werken en kijken naar hoe we de verschillende thematieken daarin kunnen vermengen. En nog duidelijker de modepartners 025 ook de samenwerking daarin naar voren te laten komen. Zoals ik al zei, afgelopen editie hebben we ook gewerkt met Rijnhuis Creatieve Industrie op het gebied van video's. En ook dat willen we gaan continueren om ook echt met hen, die Arnhemmer, de gewone inwoner, om het zo maar te noemen, te betrekken en te kijken hoe zij denken over bepaalde waarden aan mode en design. En op die manier eigenlijk het hele systeem te ondervragen en te kijken naar hoe we die transformatie door kunnen gaan. En verder, ik zou vooral eigenlijk willen oproepen om e-mails te sturen, te bellen of wat dan ook, als jullie zelf ideeën hebben om in de maand juni te presenteren in Arnhem. Want laten we vooral na deze hele coronaperiode gewoon weer een leuk bruisende stad van maken met heel veel leuke activiteiten en laten zien wat er allemaal gebeurt. Dus dat is mijn verhaal.
Dan wisselen.
Overnemen, Theodoor. Ja.
Laten we dat doen?
Ja. I think I will continue in English for the English speakers in the room today. Welcome everybody, I'm Esther Muñoz Grootveld. I'm head of program at State of Fashion. And this is a very special week for my platform because you will hear, I think, after my talk, what will happen with State of Fashion in the next year. But I'm also very happy and honored that today we have Kaat Debo, who is the director of the Fashion Museum in Arnhem, another city in the world that we feel connected to, but we also admire. So I don't know if she's already here, because I think she's joining us digitally. Yeah, I see her. And I hope she also sees us. Good morning, Kaat. Yeah. I think she cannot hear us yet, so bear with us for a second. Good morning, Kaat. Can you hear us?
Yes, hello, good morning.
Good morning. Can you also see us?
No.
No. I think if, yeah, exactly. Start video. Yeah. So I think you're going to see somebody in the screen that is not interviewing you, but it's most important that you hear us. So good morning. Thank you for joining us. Is everybody able to understand Kaat as well? Yeah? Okay. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. And I just want to start with congratulating you, because I think the Fashion Museum has now been open for about 4 weeks. So how do you feel?
Still a bit tired, because we had yesterday evening being one of the events in the scope of the reopening of the museum in Antwerp. So we not only reopened the museum, but we also launched a festival, a fashion festival within the city of Antwerp. So it's been quite a busy time, but I'm super happy that we opened. It's 3.5 years was a long time to be closed without the feedback of an audience and without the feedback of journalists. So I'm really happy to be out in the world again.
Yeah, I understand. And yeah, you already said you've been closed and preparing for the reopening for 4 years. So yeah, what did you? How did you try to prepare for this moment, and how did you prepare to reinvent yourself as a museum?
Yeah, it was a nice break because we indeed took these 3.5 years to think about what kind of fashion museum we want to be, and I think also the pandemic, the current pandemic, also helped us in that discussion. I think that we really want to be a museum that is a place that sort of offers a platform for our audience to discuss the impact that fashion has on society in many different ways. And I think our current exhibition, Emotion, Fashion and Transition, is a good example of that. So it's I think we want to take up more a critical role. And I think with each exhibition, we will question what the relevance is of what we bring, and what the relevance is of what we bring for our audience. Because I think that fashion curation is about reinventing yourself all the time. Fashion in the first place is not made to be presented in a museum. So I believe that there are many different ways to curate fashion in a museum. And so we want to keep on experimenting in order to stay relevant for a future audience.
Yeah, and talking about reinventing and constantly reflecting, I visited the museum and the new exhibitions in the first weekend of September. So I was very impressed, and I saw that you also opened a permanent presentation showing your collection. And there is a clip in that presentation where you talk about the evolving Belgian fashion identity, or maybe also the Antwerp fashion identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that you said that the Belgian fashion identity has nothing to do anymore with Belgium. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Maybe a bit too strong, because it has to do with Belgium, of course, but it's not, I think, strictly linked to a national identity. Because I don't think that's relevant anymore today. I think identities in fashion are constantly shifting, and that of course is linked to the globalization we went through the past 3 to 4 decades. If you look at the first generation of Antwerp designers that were successful on an international scale, the Antwerp 6, all 6 of them grew up in Belgium, started their companies in Belgium, are still living and working in Belgium. Most of them, not all of them. Martin moved to France. But nowadays, if I look at the alumni of the fashion department, on a total of about 140 students, they have more than 35 different nationalities. So that's the entire world in one school. And most of the students also go back to their country, or they move to big fashion capitals like London or Paris or New York. So what are they then? Are they a Belgian designer because they're trained in Belgium? Are they a French designer because they work for a French house? I often give the example of Demna Vazalia, who's now a creative director at Balenciaga. He was born in Georgia. He studied in Antwerp. He then moved to Paris, where he started his own brand, Vêtements, and he's now heading one of the biggest French houses that actually has Basque roots. So what is he? Is he Georgian? Is he Antwerp? And of course, his Antwerp training is still very visible, I think, in his work as a fashion designer, but also his sort of Georgian upbringing, his communist background is also very present in his work. And I think that makes him an interesting designer, that sort of constantly shifting identity. So we describe Antwerp or Belgian fashion more as a kind of artistic sensibility that pops up in the work of designers at certain moments in their career, but it's constantly shifting. So for me, it's not relevant to try to put a designer in a box and say you're Dutch or you're Italian or you're French, because also, you know, what is a French designer? Like none of the French houses are headed by a French designer. They're either Belgian, Italian, British. So for me, it's no longer relevant in a globalized context. So we wanted to sort of raise attention for that, and also maybe problematize the notion of identity in fashion.
Yeah. And would you say that there is something else than national identity that connects people from Belgium, or maybe specifically Antwerp? Is there something within the fashion education system that links them, or would you say there is a common denominator between these designers?
We describe as this sensibility, and within the collection presentation, we worked with a number of themes that we think could be a reflection of what Belgian fashion can be. And we worked with themes like deconstruction, for example. A lot of designers trained in Antwerp work with deconstruction, and I think the master of deconstruction is, of course, Martin Margiela, but it's also present in the work of Dirk van Saane, also present in the work of the younger generation, even in Raf Simon's work. The link between fashion and art, the link to fashion history, how designers reinterpret history. There's also a theme focusing on craftsmanship and the different ways to integrate craftsmanship in your oeuvre. You can do it in a very literal way through embroidery or handwork, but you can also do it in a very conceptual way, like Margiela, for example, by showing the process of the production process.
Yeah. And I'm also wondering, just comparing a bit to what we are doing here in Arnhem, we are trying to connect people with a certain, let's say, social, cultural agenda. Also in the Netherlands, we're trying to find this common denominator. We don't have one fashion museum, like, or actually Belgium has two, also one in Hasselt, and you as a, let's say, the museum with the international profile. What do you think is the role of a fashion museum in this landscape of fashion in Belgium?
I think the role of the museum, I think we have many different roles. There's, of course, we have the task of collecting Belgian fashion, to collect our heritage and to preserve our heritage. But I think we are also a platform for dialogue and reflection and analysis, and that means that you have to be a place where you can slow down, and I think that's very important in a time where we are overloaded every day with images, with opinions, with that you have a place where you can slow down and really dig deeper in the heritage, in the history, in the analysis and reflection, and come to a real dialogue. Because the rhythm of the museum is very different than the rhythm of the fashion world, and that's a very interesting friction, I think. So we try to also work on that friction, and then of course I think to also show the impact of fashion as an industry, and that's maybe, I think, a bit of a new role that we take up. I think museums can and maybe also should be a bit activist. There's no such thing, I think, as a neutral position. And I think in the past, museums were maybe a bit too afraid to take in a position. But we have always done that, because we decide which stories we tell and which stories we don't tell. So I think that museums, and I think also MOMU in particular, we realize also that we have blind spots, and that we have to work on those blind spots and to be very aware of stories we tell and the stories we don't tell.
And you definitely do that with the temporary exhibition Emotion, Fashion in Transition. It's quite activist, and it shows the relationship between fashion and the world. Obviously, there are many international works in there, very impressive garments in there. But what struck me actually most was that you talked to students and designers from 8 different fashion schools, I think, young people that are just entering the realm of fashion, so to say. What struck you most about what they told you?
Yeah, I first maybe want to start that for us it was really important to give a voice to designers and also to students in the exhibition, and it was a bit of a struggle, like how do we do that? Because we, of course, we have our perspective as curators, but it's just one story we tell. And then during the pandemic, we decided to have a lot of interviews with students and with designers, and we invited performer, director, and choreographer Benjamin Abel-Meerhagen to make a performance within the exhibition. And in this performance, he reworked quotes from these interviews. And what struck me with the interviews with the students, I think that several things. I think there was a kind of anger within the interviews, anger for how the industry is today, and what their position as sort of young designers is within that industry, but also hope. We asked them many different things. We asked them what success means for them. When are you a successful designer? And it was really, I think, very interesting to hear that for most of them, it was not really about economical success. We also asked about collaboration, and I think most of them said how important collaboration for them was. And there was even one student that said, for me, collaboration is the most important thing. It's more important than PR and marketing. It's maybe more important than the clothes in itself. And it's something that really interests me, is how collaboration is going to evolve within fashion, and also how creativity is going to evolve. Because how to be creative in an oversaturated industry. And we know, all of us know, there's too much product, there are too many clothes, and how does that impact your creativity and also your production process, the collaboration you have with others.
And in that sense, which designer or which development in fashion has your attention right now? What are you following closely?
Yeah, it's difficult because I follow a lot of people. But when you wrote to me that question yesterday, I had to think about a designer I'm following in the Netherlands, Duran Lanting, and I think he really has a very interesting work. How he reworks many different labels. How he also is very open about his production process, and also about the collaboration he has, which I think is super interesting. So he's certainly a designer that I'm following, but also young designers like Supriya Lele, based in London. I really find it very inspiring how she matches her, or brings together her sort of Indian background and heritage, together with her upbringing in a capital like London. We also had work in Emotion by Marine Serre, who I think is very inspiring, how she works with dead stock and how she has a whole system, a sort of a design system in reworking garments into new designs. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's very inspiring. And I think I'm almost out of time. So one last question. I hope you're going to bear with us for a couple of more minutes because we are going to reveal the theme of the State of Fashion Biennial 2022. It's actually, I think, about something that interests you, about connecting, reconnecting broken relationships and broken bonds in fashion. What would you advise us for the biannual? Who or what would you like to see next year in Arnhem?
I think I'm not going to answer with names, but I think for an initiative like yours, and it's super important to always start from the talent you have. It's something that I always say in Antwerp when the City Hall asks me, what do we have to do? Because we're also working in Antwerp on a long-term vision for fashion in Antwerp. And for me, it all starts with the academy, with where the new talent is trained and nurtured. And we have to keep on thinking about what do they need? What do they need in order to nurture their talent? And it's not only about sort of material things like funding or workspaces, but it's also, I think, about giving them a place to reflect, like what we try to do at the museum, to grow in their opinions, to grow in their creativity, in their design processes. So I would definitely focus on the talent you have, because I think that's crucial.
Well, thank you so much.
But I don't know if that's an answer to your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a good answer and a great advice. Thank you, and very much hoping to see you live next year here or maybe in Antwerp. So
yes,
thank you so much for joining us.
I would love to come over.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And then I think Theodoor. Yes,
yeah?
Please.
Is my mic on? Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So, well, let me start by introducing. My name is Theodoor Adriaans. My pronouns are he or they. I am a researcher or a storyteller, mainly in the culture of fashion, and I'm also a feminist. You might know me from my documentary series, Community Dressing, which is a series of films in which I investigate the Dutch national folkloric history and present by looking at the national costumes. And I'm very honored to host an interview session with the curatorial team for the State of Fashion in 2022. Especially since actually yesterday you have published the theme for the press, right?
Yes.
So in the second edition for State of Fashion will open on June 3rd for the public. Save the date. And the theme is called Ways of Caring. Now, Ways of Caring emphasize the need to repair broken bonds and disrupted relationships within the fashion world. Therefore, the program in Arnhem, our fashion city, will consist of exhibitions, of interactive workshops, repair stations, and a series of public interventions. So the first open call for contributions has opened yesterday. Critical fashion makers from around the globe are called upon to co-create the program. And therefore, I hope this talk might give you a little bit of an insight to what the curators have for us. I hope that this might even instigate your response to the open call. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our curatorial team. If we have them, yeah, they're joined via the interwebs, because yay, technology. They consist of two parties merged together as one team. So on the one hand, we have Fashion Open Studio in London, and on the other, we have Not Enough Collective situated in the Netherlands. Please help me in a warm welcome to Tamsin Blanchard, Mari Cortez, and Marina Saceron de Oliveira Cabral. Can we switch seats? Yes.
My name is Ursula de Castro, and I'm the co-founder and creative director at Fashion Revolution. Very excited that we will be co-curating the Arnhem Biennale. The Arnhem Biennale for me will be about communities all over the world and starting from our own wardrobes. Simple clothing repairs to far-reaching damage reparations to protect people and nature. If it sounds difficult, it isn't. This is doable.
Hi, my name is Filippo. I'm the Program and Partnership Manager at Fashion Open Studio. Curating the Arnhem Biennale will be for me part of an ongoing journey of which I actually lost track of the starting point and I'm still very much in search of the arrival. A journey about the people that will come along with us, the narratives that will be defining our relationship and reasoning, but mostly about the new path that we will be able to trace.
Hello, this is Neve from Fashion Open Studio. For the Biennale in 2022, I imagine thinking of fashion not only as an object, but as an act of doing, as a process of making, unmaking, wearing and keeping. We want to use this Biennale as an opportunity to ignite real change. For us, it should be an impetus to designers, industry, people in the supply chain and citizens to create tangible solutions together and to take action towards the change we need so profoundly.
Hello, I'm Tamsin Blanchard. I'm the curator of Fashion Open Studio. For the 2022 Biennale, I imagine a fashion industry that welcomes new perspectives, creates connections across communities, and builds a culture of well-being and healing that we all need right now.
Hello, this is Mari Cortez, and I'm part of the Not Enough Collective. For the Biennale 2022, our goal is to exercise what this new fashion reality could be. Not only about talking, but acting on it and finding these multiple solutions for this fashion system. A never-ending process.
Hola, this is Marina and I'm part of Not Enough Collective. For the biennial 2022, we want to explore ways in which different cultures, languages, bodies, and practices can coexist within the current fashion system. For that, mutual recognition and appreciation of differences is needed, as well as openness, so more horizontal relationship can flourish.
Hey, this is Andrea Debo from Not Enough Collective, and for the biennial 2022, our goal is to collectively reconfigure commons, relations, and structures from the inside to the outside in order to shape a more horizontal reality.
Yeah, will we switch over to Zoom now? Okay, so bear with us, please. We are finding technical problems. We'll be there in a sec. Do you like my coat? This coat is made in Uzbekistan. It's meant for royalty, for a queen, and I am a queen.
I think it fits the theme very well.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
yes. If we're talking about intersections, then
Exactly.
I'm just sitting here being an intersection.
What was your first response to the? You saw the theme already. What was your
Yes.
first response yesterday?
Oh. Where do we start? Shall I just give you words?
Yeah.
Heavy, hopeful. I'm finding myself in need of color even more. Does that resonate? How does that feel?
No, yeah, I think we are also in need of color. Therefore,
yeah. As Sebastian said before, like we need this. Like I feel as though coming out of the pandemic, or hopefully coming out of the pandemic, there's this need for party. There's this need for being together and just holding each other's hand, being with each other.
Yeah, and I think also colorfulness means diverseness. So it's not only literally wearing color, but also looking at things you don't know yet, getting surprised by new things. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So with 7 curators, it's kind of easy because they all bring new ideas to the table.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious to see what comes out of the open call that we launched yesterday. Yeah.
Yes,
there they are.
We have connection. Hi, Mari.
Hello.
Hi. Can you see or hear me?
Yeah, I can see myself in your camera, which is very weird.
So you'll just be talking to yourself then. But if you can hear me, that for now I think is enough. Are we also joined by Tamsin and Marina?
Yes.
Yeah, hi.
Yes.
Hi girls, welcome.
Hello.
So I suggest definitely say here that a little bit of a disclaimer, there's more curators, but they won't join us because a part of the curatorial team is at the moment at COP26, the climate conference in Glasgow, which I find to be the best reason not to be here, obviously. It's for a good cause. So ladies, if you're ready, we'll dive right in. And I'd like to start by asking you ways of caring, which is the theme. How did the theme come about? Is there anyone who'd like to share?
I think all of us, right?
Yes, please.
Who starts? Yeah, it's always.
Marina, you're big in my screen.
No, it's you.
Oh, yeah, weird.
All right. So I think like we started the whole process. It started with us talking about what has been missing in fashion, and especially like the whole time, place in fashion as well. And how could we transform these kind of relationships that we have with fashion? So yeah, that's how I'm gonna leave the floor for Tamsin and Mari.
That is
as well
quite a big topic. I mean,
Yeah,
what is
quite a
missing?
bit.
Could you give us a little bit of a heads up? What is missing?
I think it's like about this relationships and the time that we can, the time to take care, you know? I think we're missing that.
So what you're saying is just basically we miss time. We don't feel time anymore, or we feel it slipping away. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that what has been missing,
I mean, there are story missings, people missing, like other kinds of relationship that we have with clothing and fashion missing. So there has been a lot of things. And I think for us, caring is a way of reconnecting all of this that has been missing. So like reconnecting the relationships, reconnecting the people, reconnecting the cultures. And yeah, I think it's this. What do you think, Tamsin?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's been an incredible, just basic duty of care to many people in this industry that has been missing, which I think really is, for me, was really brought home by the Rana Plaza factory disaster, which is when Fashion Revolution was launched. And, that really demonstrated the ultimate lack of care and what was really missing in the industry. And also the knowledge that was missing from, brands who really had no idea if they were even working in that factory, if they were producing in that factory.
Right.
And I think that was really, for me, a kind of, not a wake-up call, because I kind of knew about this stuff, but it was a total kind of shock to the system.
Yeah.
When, over 11 people died in that disaster, that factory disaster.
Yeah.
So for me, I think personally, as a journalist, as a fashion journalist who's been covering fashion, since the early 90s, after that moment, I think reporting on fashion without talking about some of these stories, missing out on some of these stories, it was like being a sports reporter and, just reporting on the game and not talking about the racist chants that were having from the crowd.
Right.
And I think for me, it meant not just being irresponsible, but being implicit in, some of these exploitations and abuses.
Gosh, yeah. I think what I hear all of you say is there's a lot of disconnect within the field of fashion. There's a lot of, in all walks of fashion, let's say. But let me ask you, how does the theme then connect to you personally?
Yeah, I think I can say for me, and also it will tackle the collective as well. I think we had this kind of encounter, we met at Orthez, and then we missed a lot of things in there. As being international students, we had completely different experience. And I think for us, how our own culture is represented within the art institution was missing. So that was basically how we connected and how we rebuild all the relationships and started or recognized every little point about what was not there. So that kind of moved us towards this whole process of starting the collective and then writing, being at the State of Fashion. And it was very personal, I think, for all of us.
Amazingly courageous, if I might say so myself. I find that very admirable.
Thank you.
So I have a quote that I found within the theme. This is a quote by Not Enough Collective. Only by recognizing and acknowledging what is missing and by understanding the consequences of this, can we move forward together. Tamsin, could you respond to this quote by Not Enough Collective?
I think it's only by acknowledging what is missing and understanding what's missing, and that we can actually, bring some of those missing voices into this narrative, this new narrative of fashion, that we need to create to move forward. I feel as a journalist who covered the shows for over a decade, the viewpoint that I was shown of what is fashion was so narrow. For a start, it was Milan, Paris, New York, London. It's nowhere else existed. That for a start just kind of shows what was missing. I was seeing the same designers, the same models, the same materials even. There's so much of this rich cultural, artistic, expressive world that is just deemed to be not in fashion.
Right.
And I think it's time to explore everything that is out of fashion, which is, to me, what's always been really interesting. What's been going on the fringes of fashion was always really interesting to me. And it was often quite difficult to get those stories out there because, fundamentally, fashion is run on, it's about money and power and advertisers. From a media point of view, and that's how these stories are told, and how this narrative continues, and how this dominant narrative of you know, how we see the industry and how the industry has grown, that I think has really facilitated that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you can feel the need for a transition there, I'd say. So a quote by you guys, by Fashion Open Studio, was a society that cares is a society prepared for repairs. Might I ask Not Enough Collective to respond to that quote? How does that resonate with you guys?
Yeah, I think we're very interested in this process of repair and reparations. I think what we see and what we learn, I think, as well from Fashion Open Studios is that the reparation can start by a simple act as mending a broken garment. And it doesn't really matter if you know how to sew or if you are involved in fashion. But the reparation as a process can start slowly through simply listening to each other, watching others doing it. And yeah, I think the value is also there. Like the value of starting this process of reparation is just the willingness to be able to do it, or like to be willing to be open to do. Yeah.
I love that you say that it's quite liberating as well. It's quite liberating, not only for yourself, but to all the people that have a view on you or see you repairing this garment or whatever. But let me just switch to the contributions that are called upon within the open call. What kind of contributors are you hoping for within the open call? Because we want this, of course, to be a little more hopeful than it is the heaviness in there. Like the heaviness can also be very hopeful of where to transition to. Is there anyone who would like to respond? Don't be shy.
Yeah, so I think we are welcoming a lot of different kinds of practices. It's not like only related to fashion, but also maybe to art, to farmers, it's very, we don't have, I think we don't have that many expectations, but we are expecting more to be surprised, also to discover and find, different ways of doing that, you know. But I think like for the most important thing for us is that the contributors are open, like to coexist together in this process. And and to engage, like, and to kind of propose works that are engaging and that can kind of reflect the kind of work that they are proposing to the audience as well. So we understand the audience not as a kind of a static whole, but also as being transformed, but also transforming, you know. So this is, I think it's very important for us. So to conclude, it's like more, I think these contributors are people that are willing to do this, to work together, to be open and to exchange and to change worldviews and to teach worldviews or share worldviews. I think it's quite broad, my answer, but I think
no, that's fine. That's fine. It's still, let's say, open in the air. We feel first need to be surprised by what will be there with the contributions. And I think that element of surprise might be very important, as my next question was going to be, like the themes that I read upon within the general theme of the Biennale. It might become quite heavy, as I've stated before. It might become quite, I don't want to say grim, but you can, as an audience member, you might, tense is the word. Yes, but how will you make sure that a visitor might not leave the exhibitions and the event feeling like, oh, I'm carrying this huge burden, but instead feel hopeful and become part of the solution?
I think it's going to be very playful.
Ooh.
There's going to be a lot of ways to interact, to experience, to get involved in making things, in actually trying on clothes, actually kind of trying on different sorts of clothes, feeling different sorts of fabrics, meeting different sorts of people. There's going to be lots of talking. We're going to be listening to people. it's going to be a very different experience, and it's going to be in the high street, it's going to be across the city. You won't be able to miss us, and yeah, it's going to be very playful and very very life affirming and hopeful.
Fantastic.
And we'll hopefully make people kind of really think about stuff, but kind of want to change the way that they approach clothes and the way that they relate to clothes and each other.
That's amazing. Yeah. Is there also a way in which you'd like to incorporate all of the pillars that we have in Arnhem, namely a museum Arnhem, a fashion design festival, Artes, Rijn-IJssel, the fashion district Klarendal? How are you going to incorporate all of those pillars, or at least most of them? How are you going to bridge those? And I say that intentionally.
I think there's a lot of ways of connecting. Like these are very rich places and are kind of historical places and important community spaces. I think for Arnhem, like we can engage, with the space itself, like the place, but also with the content that the place produces, like museums and these kind of institutions. But we don't really know yet, I guess. Like we have been working on that because the program has been developed. So, but we for sure are gonna include all these spaces because we want to take over Arnhem, let's say.
Please,
yes. I think it's important to say as well that for us, that having a successful biennial is about the longevity that's these relationships that's going to be developed throughout the programs. That they stay there, that it becomes something else, that this process of transformation goes forward than the weeks that we're going to be open.
And we've already been exploring the streets of Arnhem and some of the amazing, the library, the fashion district, and even some of the projects that already exist in Arnhem. There's some really fantastic projects already there that we really want to bring into this and build on and acknowledge and highlight and connect with a kind of greater international scene and other people who are doing similar things, and so we can all learn from each other.
Right.
That's amazing. Can I just complete something? I think a little bit also related to the previous questions. I think we as curators, we are going to be very open and participating as well. I think like from the beginning of the process, we have been willing to do that, like within our huge team of 7 curators. So it has been a process for us, and I think we are going to engage with the audience, not as the curators, but as like collaborators and as the audience and as the guests, as the people that are going to participate through the open calls. I think it's a very horizontal relationship. So
right. Yes. I want to dive into that. This is going to be my final question. A little bit more. Can you express what it is you might need from us? Like we're in this hall with, an amount of people here. What is it that you need for us from the audience? Tough question, I know.
Yeah, maybe.
Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry.
What is it that you specifically need from us, from the audience, let's say?
I mean, we need the audiences. Yeah. We need to hear their
You just
voices.
need us. Just be there.
Yes. I was thinking about saying like just being there and being open for what is going to be presented, or open to participate in it, and to intervene on it, to say I don't agree, to say I agree, or to just be there. Yeah,
I think it's engagement, and also I think like what is also quite important for us is like to recognize ourselves in the differences. So it's kind of leave the fear out and the guilty out, and just be there, and with this open mind and body. Like we are we are not willing to protagonize or antagonize. Like we want everybody to participate, I think, on the activations. And if there's no audience and like no public and no people willing to do so, yeah, then I think maybe it's not going to be good for any of us. Yeah.
And we're all about making spaces, and we really want to make spaces for this audience to step in and show us, you know, what different stories and a variety of different perspectives we need to take on board to move forward.
Yeah, and I think perhaps like each different, each one can contribute by showing what is their way of caring. Maybe it's this, like we have some, but we want to learn others' ways of caring. I think this is a very rich experience that can be.
Right. All right, so I'll round up. Thank you for joining us. I have to say that you obviously, well, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but I have been keeping an eye on you for quite a few years now, on both of the different parties. And I love to see that you walk the walk, you talk the talk, and you actually make me quite proud to be part of this transition. So thank you.
Amazing, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Some
you
love.
very much. Looking forward to see you next year.
All of you.
Yeah, all of you.
All right, girls. See you soon.
See you.
Thank you. Good transition? Right.
Thank you so much for this introduction of the theme of State of Fashion next year. It's wonderful to hear about these other ways of caring. And I'm also excited to present a project to you today on solidarity, which in my view is closely connected to ways of caring for others, other people, other things. We actually started with two separate projects on solidarity in fashion, which is a Kiem project, and practicing solidarity, which is funded by the Vriendenloterijfonds, previously the Bankgiro Loterijfonds, which is part of Stichting Doen. So the projects are expanding, more people are becoming involved, and we are making it into one project because it's so interrelated in terms of content. You see a couple of images on screen of the practitioners involved, the makers involved, some of whom are here in the room today as well, and some of whom will be pitching their projects in the afternoon program here today. We actually started from the observation or a critique on the non-solidary strategies as part of the industrial fashion system right now. So you can think of the strategies of disconnection, which has already came up as a theme before, exploitation, alienation, non-transparency, exclusivity, systemic dehumanization, systemic inequalities. Of course, these issues were already present, but due to the pandemic, even more visible than ever. And this led to many calls for solidarity, also from partners in the industry and the supply chain, as a direct response to many brands and companies canceling their orders, which affected so many workers in factories in so many places. As part of the interviews we did in the project, we spoke to several NGOs who described an enormous backlash in fighting for human rights and the rights of workers, not only needing to fight for a living wage, but for a wage. So it was very confronting to hear this. And so this once more has shown the urgency of practicing more care for other human beings or living beings like animals or matter, material resources. And this was the context of the project, how it started. At the same time, actually around the same time, a renewed debate on solidarity started, which developed hand in hand, of course, with the Black Lives Matter movement. A different approach towards solidarity, you could say, related to identity, race, ethnicity, social class. But it also has to do with these social, cultural power relations and inequalities, and with systemic dehumanization. So it's when you look at the underlying themes and issues, it is a similar challenge. So this led to new challenges and new questions that form the context of this project, such as which lessons can we learn from the temporary standstill of mass production and mass consumption for a more ethical fashion system? Or which lessons can we learn to move beyond passive consumerism towards a more conscious, active way of engaging with fashion? Or, for example, how can we use the power of fashion, like design, imagination, and aesthetics, to collectively shape a more solidary future of fashion, more solidary practices of making and wearing? Or how could we, based on acknowledging these social and cultural inequalities, develop more affirmative and activating fashion practices to create more empathy, to create more respect, to create more connections again? So like I said, of course, these were already questions that were important and urgent before the pandemic, but just ever more visible, which is why we started this project. And then we said, how are we going to research that? And we decided that these uncertain times really need an open, explorative, speculative approach to develop new visions, new future scenarios, new directions, new concepts for alternative fashion practices. So it is through artistic research and design-driven research that we take on that artistic, speculative and explorative approach, hopefully to help imagine or reimagine an alternative future of fashion, exploring multiple fashion systems, more solidary systems, and offering already a concrete, tangible experience of what that could entail in the future. So we invited several practitioners to develop their own proposals within the framework of this project. And they did develop several proposals for their own social practice as part of this project. We just had a project meeting last Wednesday because the project, well, just recently started actually. And it was wonderful to hear all the different perspectives and the diversity of perspectives and approaches towards solidarity, what that could mean or maybe should mean, and how to create more solidarity, and how to learn to create more solidarity, and maybe what should we unlearn in doing so at the same time. And of course, when you deal with this topic, it really raises some underlying fundamental questions like, with what or with whom do we need to be solidary with? With what or with whom do we need to empathize more? What is it or who is it that needs more care or that needs more attention? And indeed, like I said, how can we learn to do so? So we invited the practitioners who participate in these projects to develop their own visions on these questions and their own approaches through experimentation and maybe new methods of approaching this. We use several methods in the project. We also have a work group that focuses on the theory development. So we try to develop a framework, a theoretical framework, an ethical framework to approach solidarity. What is solidarity? What does it mean? How can we understand it? Example, it's a work in progress, of course, as well, but I wanted to refer to one of the philosophers in our theoretical research. The philosophy of Iris Murdoch, in our view, offers an interesting perspective on this issue. In her view, she reflects on what it means to have an ethical attitude, to enact an ethical attitude. And in our project, we state that having an ethical attitude is a necessary precondition for solidarity. And for Iris Murdoch, an ethical attitude actually entails offering your undevoted attention to something or something else that haven't or hasn't received enough attention. So offering more attention to that which hasn't received enough attention, which is like a basic principle of having an ethical attitude. But also how you give attention to is very important in the philosophy of Iris Murdoch. And in her view, it has to do with stepping away from your own ego and your own self-interests. So this is what Murdoch calls a process of unselfing. It means moving towards a decreased egocentricity and developing a greater sensitivity for other beings or other objects in the world. So this process of unselfing is an important precondition for developing an ethical attitude in order to act in a more solidary way, which is also the starting point for developing a moral attitude and moral behavior. So just briefly, there's much more to be said about this. I just wanted to briefly touch upon it to give you an impression of what we are developing and how we are developing our thoughts on what solidarity is and could mean or maybe should mean. Based on this, we came to a working definition for the project of the notion of solidarity, which is that solidarity can be understood as practicing, in a multiple sense of the word, putting into practice and exercising, practicing an ethical attitude through a process of unselfing, which allows to give more attention to that which has not been given enough attention. For example, giving more attention to other people, animals, objects, materials, material resources. And doing so with the aim of collective well-being, which also means prioritizing the collective over individual self-interests. And this requires a sense of empathy towards others in order to come to that change in moral behavior. So we're also exploring how to learn to empathize because of that. Another method as part of the project is the field research and the expert interviews that we did in order to map the impact of the pandemic on the fashion industry, which was the part that was led by Irene Maldini from the Hogeschool van Amsterdam. We started with a small project, so that part of the project was actually already finalized before the summer. Like I said, well, the preliminary conclusions of that part of the research are that there has indeed been a backlash in terms of the rights and maybe even the opportunities for change, while at the same time there was more attention to what needed to change. So there are two sides to this story. In her research, Irene Maldini started from the question whether or not this pandemic could maybe function as a portal to a new world, a new fashion reality. But she concluded that if it could maybe be an opportunity to function as a portal, to create positive transformation, it will need to come from the pain and the confrontation of so many of the people involved, rather than from collective enlightenment. But she did observe, which is hopeful, some revisions at the same time in the industry, which has to do with inequality, overproduction, and overconsumption. So it's very interesting that she did find new initiatives that started as a result of, the current situation during the pandemic, which are, hopeful elements that we can build upon. So there are several elements that are starting to slowly be revised. For instance, some revisions regarding inequality one thing that she found was that there's even more dialogue within the supply chain between different partners and stakeholders to deal with these challenges together. There was also a major call to revise the legal frameworks of several companies' purchasing practices. The trust-based relationships and the importance of trust-based relationships in the supply chain were gained in importance. There was an increased awareness of the interdependency of different partners or in the stakeholders in the supply chain, needing to act together. For instance, NGOs acting together to make a difference. With regard to overproduction, she found that several companies made some revisions in terms of a more careful curation of collections, decreasing the number of seasons even more. And with regard to the revisions of overconsumption, she found changes in consumer behavior, like reduction of new purchases, more attention to repair. So just a few, signals that we can build up on if we really want to develop this project further and create new practices. These are ways that we can let those practices be informed to hopefully move towards, more long-lasting change. So this is the starting point for the explorative, speculative, artistic and design-driven practices as part of the project. And these just started. They will be developed over the next couple of months, and we're hoping to present them during State of Fashion next year. So this is just an introduction of the project. I'll leave it with this for now. So thank you so much for your attention. Or do we have times for questions? Are there any questions from the audience or maybe in the chat? For Sebastian, maybe Esther, Thijs, Theodoor, myself. We have a microphone over there. Or maybe, I don't know, starting from the issue you raised, what are ways of caring that you already practice on a personal level? I would be interested in maybe hearing reflections of people here. What are your ways of caring? Maybe that's a nice way to start the conversation, if anyone wants to respond. Anybody care? If not, maybe we can wrap up here. It's also fine. We can continue the conversation this afternoon. Yeah? Okay, we'll go for lunch. Thank you so much to everyone present here today, physically and online. And we'll continue our conversation this afternoon. And for those of you who cannot be present physically, I'm hoping to meet soon and involve you in what we're developing together here. Thank you so much.